Hey, this is Rick Manning. Fireworks today with Christopher Wray, the FBI director before the House Judiciary Committee. We've got Representative Lee from Florida, who has a law enforcement background, quizzing Wray on the attack on parents who attended school board meetings. Let's just take a look at what she had to say. It's here you go. 1, 2, 3, go.
Reconcile today. So we know that there are a limited number of agents, a limited number of resources, and a vast responsibility to prevent a broad array of very serious offenses. And what I'd like to do with that in mind is turn your attention to the decision within the Bureau to use investigative resources to investigate and surveil parents who attended school board meetings for the purpose of sharing their concerns about the nature of their children's education and the efficacy of the policies that were being implemented by school boards around the country. Is it correct that in 2021, the FBI created a threat tag specifically designed to identify parents attending school board meetings?
Yes, but I think it's important for people to understand.
First of all, let's just be clear. He answers yes. They did create a threat tag specifically targeting parents who were attending FBI meetings or school board meetings. So he answers yes. But now watch how he kind of says, "Oh, but that doesn't matter."
Understand what a threat tag is and is not. It is not what we base investigations on. It's not an investigative tool. It's an administrative function in our system.
Hold on. It's an administrative function in the system. What that means is they're putting you into the system and putting a little tag on you saying you're a threat. By definition, a threat tag means you're a threat. So that is what he's saying. He's specifically saying it's a threat tag we are using as an administrative tool. Well, what they're using as an administrative tool is to decide who they should do more investigation on and who they shouldn't, pretty obviously.
And it doesn't change anything about how we investigate, tools we use, any of our longstanding standards for predication.
But in those
and you mentioned the whole
circumstances,
resource allocation question.
it is correct, is it not, however, that agents did in fact surveil and investigate certain parents who were attending school board meetings?
No, ma'am, that's actually not correct. We opened 25 assessments into reports that were tagged, but none of those involved incidents at school board meetings. And to my knowledge, the FBI has not opened investigations on any parent for exercising speech at school board meetings.
Okay, so once again, what does he say? He goes, no, we did threat assessments. And we put threat tags on them. And, we're not talking about them, anything they said at the school board meeting. But no, we put threat assessments on, and we did investigate them. And we have, in fact, put 25 investigations together on people who specifically were at school board meetings, by the way. So he flat out, this is the standard doublespeak. He has lied before the committee because the fact is he's lying by what he's not saying. And thank you for Representative Lee for making that clear.
Would you be concerned that to do so would be an infringement or perhaps a chilling on the First Amendment rights of parents to participate freely and openly in those meetings? Do you believe that would be an appropriate function of the Bureau?
I believe that our mission is to protect the American people and uphold the Constitution. And the uphold the Constitution part is very important to me and to our people. And I will say to you the same thing I said to all 56 of our field offices as soon as I read that memo, which is the FBI is not and has never been in the business of policing or investigating speech by parents at school board meetings, and we're not about to start now.
Now, if you believe that, he's got a bridge to sell you. It's located in Arizona now. It's no longer in London, but he's got a bridge to sell you because apparently they've been involved in regulating speech a whole bunch based on FISA warrants and other things that we've found out about. I want to move on from this little exchange because it moves on to other things. I want to now go directly to later on Chairman Jim Jordan schools Wray on a variety of issues. So here we go. I'm sorry. By the way, first of all, this is the memo. This is actually the report from the House Judiciary Committee that shows very specifically that the FBI was in fact operating off of the National School Board Association memo. It lays it all out, and it was directly as a result of Biden administration reaching out, getting the school board, National School Board Association, to make a request to investigate people who attended school board meetings. And so this is not something, Wray has had this report. He knew what the findings were in this report, and yet it's they did deny they were doing anything until, in response to this same Judiciary Committee earlier in this year, they acknowledged for the first time that it opened 25 guardian assessments of school board threats. And 6 of these investigations were run by the FBI's Counterterrorism Division. Okay? These admissions supplement whistleblower disclosures about the FBI's actions, including disclosures the FBI investigated a mom because she belonged to a right-wing moms group and is a gun owner, and a dad because he rails against the government. Okay? He doesn't want to stop free speech unless you're a right-wing gun owner who is a mom and you say, gee, I don't like what's going on in our country. No, then they don't like your speech, and they're a counterterrorism threat. This is directly from the Judiciary Committee report. So FBI Director Wray, you lie through your teeth. Now here's Jim Jordan in the very beginning of the hearing, basically talking about this exact same issue in terms of targeting people in school boards.
In a survey last fall, 4 out of 5 Americans said they believe there's a 2-tiered system of justice in America today. They said that because there is. They said that because of what they've witnessed. Think about what Americans have seen. National School Board Association, left-wing political group, writes to the White House and asks them to treat parents at school board meetings as terrorists. And the Garland Justice Department does just that. They put together a memo, set up a dedicated line of threat communication, a snitch line on parents. As a result, parents get investigated by our FBI, get a threat tag associated with their name, 25 of them, because whistleblowers came and told us were investigated by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Americans have seen the FBI's Richmond field office put together a memorandum saying pro-life Catholics are extremists. They've seen 20 FBI agents, SWAT team members, show up at the home of Mark Houck and arrest him in front of his wife and 7 children, even though he had indicated he'd be happy to turn himself in. What was he arrested for? Him and his 12-year-old son were praying outside an abortion facility. Some guy starts screaming in his son's face, and he did what frankly any dad would do, defended his child. What's interesting is the National School Board Association apologized for the letter, but the Attorney General refuses to rescind his directive. The FBI did rescind, thank goodness, the Richmond Catholic Memorandum, but they refuse to tell Congress who wrote it and who approved it. And Mr. Houck, when he got his day in court, he was acquitted by a jury of his peers. American speech is censored, parents are called terrorists, Catholics are called radicals, and I haven't even talked about the spying that took place of a presidential campaign or the raiding of a former president's home. But maybe what's more frightening is what happens if you come forward and tell Congress. If you're a whistleblower, come tell the legislature, come tell the Congress what's going on. Look out. You will be retaliated against. Ask Garrett O'Boyle. We told Congress about these issues. Took his clearance, they took his pay, they took his kids' clothes. Ask Gary Shapley, 14-year veteran at the IRS, handled some of the biggest international tax fraud cases at the agency. He comes forward, and the Justice Department kicks him off the case.
Yeah, what we're talking about, and this is, I think, Jordan is now, this is in his opening remarks. And so what you're going to see next is Jordan specifically directing questions at Wray later on in the hearing. and where he directs a lot of these questions to him. And it's a battering ram, and it's great to see. And hopefully we'll hold some of these people accountable. So here's Jordan confronting Wray directly on that. Wray was in the witness chair when Jordan was talking, but it wasn't in an interactive role. So here you go.
Objection. Director, what's the difference between a traditional Catholic and a radical traditional Catholic?
I'm not an expert on the Catholic orders.
Well, your FBI wrote a memo talking about radical traditional Catholics. I'm just wondering if you could define it for us.
Well, what I can tell you is you're referring to the Richmond product, which was a single product by a single field office, which as soon as I found out about it, I was aghast and ordered it withdrawn and removed from FBI systems.
You were aghast, then why won't you let us talk to the people who put it together?
We are working on finishing an internal review into what happened.
We have to wait. We, the Congress, and the American people have to wait until you do an internal review. It's not a criminal investigation going on here. An internal review before we can talk to the people who wrote this.
When we finish our internal review, which will be very soon, we will come back before the committee
in America?
to provide a briefing on what we found.
Well, we appreciate the briefing, but we want to talk to the people who wrote it. Any idea how many Catholics there are in America, Director?
No, sir.
There's a lot, over 60 million. What percentage of those are radical traditional Catholics, according to the Richmond Field Office of the FBI?
Again, that product is not something that I will defend or excuse. It's something that I thought was appalling and removed it.
Let's read from that product, page 4 of that product. By the way, the copy you gave us, when can we get a copy that didn't have all these redactions on it so we can actually see what the American taxpayers were paying for to see their rights, their First Amendment religious liberty rights?
I'm going to stop it just for a second because I want you to see the redactions that he's talking about. This is the document itself. You see that he's holding up, whether it is the exact document that Jim Jordan's holding up. This is the redaction. They take out the names involved on the first page. Second page, you don't have any idea what they're talking about. You have to guess. Third page, well, that's an instructive page. The whole page is redacted. Fourth page, what you learn from the fourth page is this basically came from our good old friends at the down at the Southern Poverty Law Center who were part of it. So here you go. Here's the fifth page, redacted. Sixth page, most of it redacted. Seventh page, you've got some appendix, and once again, Southern Poverty Law Center is the source of this. End notes redacted, and then you're back to the beginning again. So when Jordan talks about an unredacted document, understand hard to get the context of this document without being able to get through the redactions. So here we go. We'll go back to Jordan.
Attack. Let me just read from page 4. Provide new opportunities to mitigate extremist threat through outreach to traditional Catholic parishes and the development of sources with the placement and access to report on places of worship. That's pretty fancy language for they're trying to put informants in the parish, in the church. That's what this memorandum said, Director, from one of your field offices. And you won't let us talk to the people who did it. Any response to that?
I didn't know. I was waiting for the question.
No, you think priests should be informants inside the church, Director?
We do not recruit, open, or operate confidential human sources to infiltrate, target, report.
But that's not what this said. It sounds like you were trying to do it in Richmond, Virginia.
No, sir. No,
you
sir.
Weren't? This didn't happen? You can assure us that this didn't happen?
That product did not, to as best as we can tell, result in any investigative action as a result of it. None.
You know what the motivation for this was? Why would they even think about doing this? You know what the motivation was?
Well, again, I think that's what our internal review will find, and I'd rather wait until I hear what the results of that internal.
Well, I don't need an internal review. I can read the document. I assume you can do the same because it says right there on the same page. Richmond assesses extremist interest in radical traditional Catholics is likely to increase over the next 12 to 24 months in the run-up to the next general election. Same paragraph. Events in which extremists and radical traditional Catholics might have common cause include legislation, judicial decisions in such areas as abortion rights, immigration, affirmative action, and LGBTQ protections. It's politics. That's the motivation. In the run-up to the next election, and they talk about The border, affirmative action, and abortion rights, it's total politics. I mean, I think it's interesting that we just got a decision from a bunch of Catholics who sit on the United States Supreme Court relative to affirmative action. Politics was the total motivation here, and that's what's scary. That's what's, I think, so frightening, and how this happens, I don't know. And 5 people signed off on it. 5 people, including the Chief Division Counsel at the Richmond Field Office. I'd like to talk to this lawyer. And a lot of people in this room went to law school, get a course on the Constitution, talks about the First Amendment. I find that really scary. Again, when do you think we're going to have a chance? How soon are you going to complete this internal investigation so we can talk to these folks who put this together?
I expect us to be able to brief the committee on our internal review later this summer.
Will that briefing include the names of the individuals who put this document together attacking Americans' First Amendment liberty?
I'm not sure yet what it'll include because it's not done yet, but when it is, we'll provide you with an appropriate briefing.
What are you doing to fix it so this doesn't happen again?
Well, we've already started putting in place a number of fixes, and those will be further informed by the results of the review.
What are those fixes? More training, more things, more. It's that same thing you told us on FISA.
And there you go. It's we're going to do some fixes. I'll let you see its total response because there's a dispute over whether or not these fixes on FISA have worked or not. And it's kind of interesting back and forth, but you get down to it. What do you end up with? You end up with, trust us, we'll fix it. That's always the answer. Trust us, we'll fix it. When something's rotten to the core, you can't suddenly make it smell like a flower. This is an agency that has bad apples down to the division level in Richmond, and who knows what's happened elsewhere that didn't get leaked out around the country. But let's just go through and let you have the answer.
While you may have some improvement, you still got 204,000 times the database was illegally searched. So what are the training and procedures you're putting in place?
Well, I'll put the FISA stuff to the side.
I'm just using that as an example of where you've told us the same thing, you fixed something and you haven't.
I do not believe the number that you just invoked on the FISA side is since the reforms, the fixes, as you called them.
Can we get an unredacted?
Those post-date the numbers that you're referring to.
Director, can we get an unredacted copy while you're still doing this internal investigation? Can we at least get an unredacted copy of this memorandum?
I will find out if there's more of the document that can be shared with you. We've tried to be very careful in what we redact, and there's always a basis for it. So let me go back and see if there's more that we can provide. But I know my instructions are to be as sparing as possible in the redactions that we provide.
So what we have is pretty obvious in terms of this whole thing. We have an FBI director who apparently attended dance school rather than a constitutional course on First Amendment, who lies about not having political motivations when that's clearly the motivation of the Richmond memo attacking Roman Catholics. He lies about the fact that they are not engaged in First Amendment violations when they are clearly during this time frame when he's the FBI director, they've got people directly coordinating with social media companies in what federal judge called one of the greatest abuses of power in American history. He's the FBI director. I'm sure they'll read him in on it at some point and what his FBI agents are doing. But apparently he thinks he's protecting the First Amendment as he goes off and censors people for speech over their so-called misinformation, malinformation, or disinformation, which turns out to be accurate and true. And in fact, they should have been censoring their own government resources who are lying about so many different things for the last few years. That's Christopher Wray. And if Christopher Wray, if there's a new president in 2025, Christopher Wray should no longer get to be FBI director effective January 20th at 12:01 in 2025. He should be gone. And maybe we can replace him with somebody who's a little better versed in the Constitution. I'm going to take a look at some of the comments here because the comments always, I really I want to thank, all of you guys who chat, and I really want to take this time to thank you. The comments you make in the chat really do make a difference. They help me focus a little bit about what you care about on it, and challenge me a little bit in terms of my thinking. So I really appreciate thoughtful comments in the chat. And if you appreciate what we're doing, I hope you'll share this video. If you are so inclined, throw a star or two our way. This is really one of those things we just love doing. It's something we've started doing last few months. And it's really so we can be right on time on things that are happening that affect your life, that affect our freedoms, and be able to have you see the stuff. And we'll have a couple more clips off of this off this testimony, because there's other things we want to talk about, FISA and the like, that we'll do tomorrow. But right now, I just want to thank you for taking the time to be here and to chat, and to please tell a friend. It's important that people know what's going on, and they can, that way they know how to deal with what the government is doing. Let's look at, and oh, by the way, if you are interested in following our materials, if you go to the very top of the chat, we've got an email, we've got a thing where you can get in and sign up to be on as part of our email list. So, and it's free. You get something every day. It has videos, it has articles, it has cartoons, and you really like it. And once again, it's free. I'm going to just take the first one, Laura Miller. Our government is all a lie. I'm going to tell you, I cling to the idea that this isn't true, but the fact that somebody can sit there and effectively try to spin their way out of abusing people because they have to be Roman Catholic, going and arresting a gentleman who defended his son and who was praying at an abortion clinic when a crazy person went and got in his face and attempted to harm his kid. He defended his 12-year-old kid, and he's the one who ends up with the guns pointed at him, his home ransacked. We've seen the stuff that's gone on over the last 2 years with the various people, like going from Roger Stone having a 6 a.m. raid where CNN was tipped off, to Paul Manafort being dragged out of bed, to people. And a case that just drove me nuts was a couple in Homer, Alaska, who somebody said, oh, they might have been at in January 6th. That couple from Homer, Alaska, who ran a bed and breakfast at 6 a.m. had their bed and breakfast rousted, their customers thrown out. And because somebody said, oh, they look like somebody who might have been at January in the Capitol on January 6th. There's no end to abuses that we've seen, that we've had to talk about. And yet this FBI director, 200,000 cases from the Insurance Inspector General report, 200,000 cases of FISA abuses, where people are at the FBI apparently just randomly going through and checking out their girlfriends and ex-girlfriends on FISA to see how they're doing. I mean, it's bad, basically being FISA's internet stalkers. It's just the abuses are so overwhelming that the fact this guy can sit in front of Congress and pretend to support the First Amendment just drives me nuts. Let's see what else we have. But so my answer to you, Laura, is we have to fight for our government. We have to fight for our rights. We have to fight for our freedom. We never, never, never give up our freedom. And we have to continue to fight for it. Of course, government is always going to push towards bigger government. And the only thing that pushes back are the people exercising their rights, their constitutional rights of speech, and of the right to vote. And you need to hold your legislators accountable to make certain they're voting to roll back what's going on. I'm hopeful. One of the reasons Jim Jordan wants the names of the people responsible for the Richmond memo is because in the House, they have the capacity to defund individual salaries. And if they know who actually wrote the memo, then they have the capacity to say, we don't think you deserve to have a job here. And while we can't fire you, we can make certain that your pay for the next fiscal year is only $1. And they can put that into the appropriations bill for the judiciary, for the FBI, for the Justice Department, put that in there, and then have a vote. and force, and then House will vote on it, and then the Senate will decide if they want to keep that in and have a big fight over it. Well, yeah, we need to have a big fight about defunding individual members of the civil service who's supposed to work for you who abuse freedom. And that's why he wants those names, because he wants to hold them accountable, because he knows that Christopher Wray will not do so. So that's what all that was about. Let's go on. I'm spending time on that. Sorry. If I do this, this is going to be the world's longest live stream. Wray belongs in prison cell and on terror watch list himself. I think that he's very slick in trying to answer questions in ways where he leaves out enough stuff that he finds himself, let's put it this way, in my estimation, on the wrong side of the truth. I think he should be held accountable. I think he should lose his job. Let's find out where we are. Well, there, Carolyn, you've got the right answer. I should have answered you. You just lifted what you said. He really thinks that people are going to believe him. Yeah, that's the thing. These guys actually think that people are watching this or buying that they're shoveling. And, they're shoveling a big load of it at you. And the question is anybody going to believe him? And the answer is no. He looks like an actor who's sitting there testifying in a movie, and effectively defending the indefensible and dodging around. But it was good to see him taking some punches there from Jim Jordan there in the end. So we want to thank Jim, Representative Jordan, who was Americans for Limited Government's Legislator of the Year a couple 3 years ago. Good man, works hard, and is a little overwhelmed with the task he's grappling with. But the fact is, he's tough as nails, and he doesn't back down. And he's the kind of guy who we need fighting for us. So thank goodness for Representative Jordan. Let's see what we got. Our DOJ and FBI are not worth listening to. I wouldn't believe them if they said the sun was shining. It actually was. Wray is covering up what was actually going on. I think that Wray, let's just be clear. On the Hunter Biden laptop, the FBI engaged in a cover-up campaign for a year. They attacked the people who actually brought the FBI. They attacked Rudy Giuliani, who brought it forward. They attacked the guy who had the laptop left with him by Hunter Biden, and they attacked him. They said it was Russian disinformation when they knew it wasn't. They continued on that attack for years. And now the truth's coming out because of whistleblowers and others. And what they're doing to the whistleblowers, they're abusing them. They've cost them their jobs, their livelihoods. They're destroying their capacity to make a living in direct contravention of the law. And when your law enforcement no longer follows the law, is there law at all? Well, that's a good question. And we're going to delve deeper into this and see if anybody forced Wray to answer that question. But for now, what we know is he admitted after not admitting it for a long time and having it be brought out there by a whistleblower that they had in fact attacked 25 people who were in parents and identified 25 parents that we know from the report that 6 of them ended up with counterintelligence investigations, the same agency that decided Donald Trump was a Russian spy and went off and spent 3 years investigating Donald Trump, the one that Peter Strzok ran. Well, that group of clowns is busy going off and attacking parents and thinking, that the parents aren't going to push back, trying to intimidate people, say, don't you dare go in and fight against CRT. Don't you dare fight against the sexualization of our children. That's what the FBI is doing. That's what Christopher Wray's FBI was doing. So do you believe them? Well, I believe what they do. I don't believe what they say. Okay, there we go. That's what I just did. Christopher Wray is Republican appointed as FBI conviction. Okay, Andy, I'm not going to go on with your thing, but I will answer your question about being a Republican. I think everybody who is a Trump supporter will admit that that Donald Trump's appointments in the intelligence field were disappointing, and they were disappointing, but I think it was because so much the people who he was being put in front of him to choose. Christopher Wray is the typical FBI director choice that, since he's got all the credentials of being, in the FBI, and when in fact what has to happen in the next opportunity for a Republican president to appoint an FBI director is what we need is somebody from the outside who's going to be aggressively looking to transform the FBI from a domestic from a group that's politically motivated to a group that's actually supposed to do what the FBI is supposed to do. And I think curtailing their capabilities that were given to them under the Patriot Act makes sense. We have to fix FISA. There's a number of things that have to be done. Donald Trump did pick Wray. Remember, Donald Trump got impeached because he picked Comey, okay, or because he fired Comey. That's why he got impeached. Or I'm sorry, he got the Mueller investigation because he fired Comey. 2 days later, we ended up with Mueller. So, excuse me if Donald Trump said, I don't really have a lot of wiggle room. I've got to appoint somebody who Mitch McConnell will say okay to. And that list didn't include people who actually wanted to reform the FBI. So you got what you got. He hired somebody who was the same swamp, different height, but same swamp as Comey. And, and that guy is a problem. There's no doubt. Thank you for pointing that out. One thing I'll say, I love it when people from alternative points of view get on here and rant about stuff, because it gives me a chance to rant about stuff too. Let's see here. Let's just look at Jim Burnap. The FBI is a monolith that has reached its peak and should be divided into 3 to 5 agencies, never have the power it is today. Is in real life what many Russians fear about the KGB. I think, Jim, that is a very good point. One of the great, when you look at what the FBI is requesting for an appropriation for a new building, whether that building be in DC or in Alabama, what they're requesting for a new building is essentially a building bigger than the Pentagon. Bigger than the Pentagon. That's what they want for the new building. So they can, I don't want an FBI that it takes a building bigger than the Pentagon to house. That's not the FBI. I don't think that's the FBI that fits neatly within the boundaries of the First Amendment or of the Bill of Rights, for that matter. And and so the fact they admit they want a building that's larger than the Pentagon tells you a lot about their view of how intrusive they intend to be in domestic political activity. And quite honestly, as far as I'm concerned, they can stay in the Herbert Hoover building. And if I had my way, I would end the exterminator services there, and just let them deal with the rats who run amok all over Washington, D.C. But that's just me. These hearings are a joke. Stop the talking to something. Dems have lied and made up stuff for years. And you think by asking him questions, he's going to tell you the truth. Oh my God, come on, everybody, you have to do better than this. Linda, I agree with you in the frustration that, you have hearings and you don't think anything happens. But one of the things that which is why I pointed out the reason that Jim Jordan was asking about the names of the people in Richmond, because there are only so many things Congress can do. One thing they can do is they can hold individuals who violate our individual rights responsible. And that is, and we're protected career civil servants who have civil service protections that you and I in our jobs would have absolutely, we can't fathom how hard it is, but I can tell you as somebody who used to be head of I was Chief Staff Public Affairs Labor Department in 2007, 2008. under George W. Bush, Lane Chow's secretary. And when I was doing that, when you had a personnel problem with a career person, we didn't have a career person who was my direct across kind of contemporary to handle that kind of stuff. So I had to handle it. And you can spend half your life dealing with complaints about somebody moved a chair and moved my desk 4 feet, and I don't get as much sunlight as I used to get. Those are the kind of complaints you deal with. And when you don't have a capacity to fire people, you don't have a capacity to actually have real operational control, you have places like the FBI where you might take 3 years because of the civil service system to get at bad apples who are doing bad things. There's a way to fix that, and we're working on that in terms of allowing to do what Congress did in a bipartisan way in 2017 when the Veterans Affairs was found to be leaving veterans on the street, not taking their appointments, not taking their calls, and allowing them to die because it was just too inconvenient to deal with veterans who were sick. That happened. 2017, now you didn't hear about it all that much because it was during the Obama administration, and after all, that couldn't be discussed in terms of nothing bad happened during the Obama administration. Veterans were being left in the street to die. It was so bad that Democrats and Republicans came together to pass reform of the VA Veterans Administration. One of those reforms allowed for an expedited firing process for VA civil servants who weren't doing their job, who were incompetent, recalcitrant, or were lazy. Okay. And so we, along with some others, we were pushing that exact language to be implemented across the federal government, and including the FBI. And the reason's simple, and it still hasn't happened. President Trump supported it. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get it passed when we had the opportunity due to some other reasons. But I had President Trump sign off on it, and unfortunately, we weren't able to get the ball across the goal line. Fact is, that's something which this Congress needs to do now. They need to put this across the board and put that kind of language into the FBI appropriation bill, and specifically for Department of Justice as a whole. And that way, I'm a little hesitant to do that with the Democrats having the firing power. But the fact of the matter is, if you're in a position and you would get that done for 2025, those people who are going to block any reforms of the FBI will be putting their jobs at risk by doing so. And that's what we have to do. We have to change the system so that people who won't do their job and are being paid by the taxpayers can be gotten rid of. And that is something we've been working on for quite a while and will continue to work on, and I hope with your support. Let's see here. Let's see. Boom, 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 boom. Debbie, this is what I should have said. I don't care who or which party political Wray, head of the FBI, made Wray head of the FBI. He's a political hack and absolute disgrace and should be investigated and removed. Debbie, I'm on your side. I agree with you. Let's see. I'm scrolling through here, and let me just end this with a simple statement. If you think this is valuable to you, if you think this is valuable for other people to see, please share this video. Please let people know what's going on. People, there's 3.5, 4-hour hearing. It's impossible, to deal with all of it. I think the first 15 minutes of this does a pretty darn good job of laying out the contrast and the fight that exists, and really raises the question of what the heck the FBI is doing tagging people who are parents who are trying to defend their children from abusive government that wants to put their children at risk, wants to indoctrinate their children. How dare they? How dare they? We know that the moms groups, there have been some moms groups that have now been put on watch lists subsequent to that activity by the FBI, the ones we just chronicled. And it's because the people who are making the lists are people like at the Southern Poverty Law Center, who are radical leftists, who the FBI, the Biden FBI, and truthfully the Trump FBI that Donald Trump never had, is supposed to be apolitical, so it shouldn't matter who's FBI director, but clearly was directed in a political manner against Donald Trump. We need to make certain that we take this FBI and we downsize it in a way that makes it actually be able to accomplish the mission it's supposed to accomplish, while leaving the average citizens alone and not violating people's constitutional rights. We have to put accountability measures in place that says if you've caught violating constitutional rights, you face real severe penalties. And those penalties can both be monetary and personal freedom penalties. Those are things that matter. Those are things that we have to do, because ultimately, if there's no accountability for violating the law and for violating our freedom, then there's nothing in the way from them doing it. And so, yeah, we have to establish accountability. ALG is working on that all the time. I mean, it's like we spend a lot of time on that. And I just appreciate all you guys jumping in. We do have a take action that talks about ending the censorship. Those of you who are on our email list, if you have not responded to that, it went out a couple of days ago. If you just check it out. It's I think the headline was from the emails had my name in it. So if you just put Richard Manning, type it into your search bar and find that and send that take action to Congress, to Speaker McCarthy, asking him to fight this fight, that would really be helpful. It really does. Magnifying the reach is important, and you guys we can't do any of this without you, and I really appreciate all you do. Thank you for tuning in. We'll have another installment tomorrow. We might do FISA. We might do something else. I'm trying to get a congressman to talk about FISA. So if I can get a congressman to talk about FISA, we'll do that tomorrow. If we can't, then we may talk about something else. With that, this is Rick Manning signing off.